And this morning, he was not intending to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the 2020 election. He was actually attempting to make the opposite point, which is that in 2020, despite COVID, despite many attempts to suppress the vote, a record number of voters, Democrats and Republicans, independents too, turned out in the face of a pandemic, and election officials made sure they could vote and have those votes counted. He was also explaining that the results would be illegitimate if states do what the former president asked them to do in more than a half a dozen states in 2020, after the 2020 election, toss out ballots and overturn results after the fact. And his view is that one of the most important roles we can play now is informing and educating the public on what these laws are, on efforts to suppress their vote, and even beyond the laws, efforts in different states across the country to make it more difficult for them. But I will also say that there has been discussions between Democrats and Republicans for months now about voting rights legislation. They have been invited multiple times, a part of the conversation, reached out to, engaged with. 16 of them have supported the protection of voting rights legislation in the past and declined to do that this time. They are not uninformed about exactly what this legislation would do, and they've always been welcome to be a part of the conversation. They decided not to, and I think that's important for people to understand. Yeah, look, I think you heard the president say last night, several times, I think, that he was deeply disappointed that voting rights legislation didn't move forward. You've also heard him say, and he would repeat this to advocates who have been fighting so hard since the 2020 election, that he's going to fight until his last breath to ensure there is voting rights legislation that passes. I know today marks 1 year, but that does not mean our work is done. Nobody's packing up their bags. We are continuing the fight and continuing the work ahead.